All right, it's live.
All right.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. How are you doing
Testing.
today, Anna?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Good. Good. It's our last day of the weekend, so I'm just trying to enjoy it,
It's
relax.
that feeling like it's still the weekend, but I know the Monday is coming, so I'm half happy
Yeah.
and half stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of stressed, let's talk about the news. Now, I'm literally getting a twitch from all the things going on recently. I gotta calm down, but it helps me to talk about it, to process it. Because after I talk about it, I almost feel like I'm so done with it.
As long as we talk about it at reasonable times, because talking about it and reading these things like late at night, right about the time that you go to bed, is just an invitation to not sleep well.
So we're doing it during the day. Let's
Yeah.
talk about all the things going on and just get it out of the
You
way.
process things in the morning and during the day, and you just watch mindless shows at night, and
Or,
you go to bed.
Garden or something to calm you down.
I mean, you can't garden at night.
We can with our grow tent.
That's true. That's true.
We've been getting quite the green thumb, and by we, I mean you.
No, I'm trying to get a green thumb.
We're growing all the things, but spring's coming. Spring is here, technically.
Yeah.
So,
I never really know when it starts. I used to live in Boston, and Boston spring didn't come officially when spring came,
yeah, because they're like mega cold up there.
Right. So I never know when spring is actually here, but I feel like it's here for us in Maryland.
Yeah.
I accept it. I accept the weather now.
Yeah. I'm accepting a lot of things, but I just can't accept the fact that gas is like $60 for a tank now.
All right. Yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah, it's a kind of a thing, but the problem is it's going to flow into everything else, because
Yeah.
if gas is expensive, then it's expensive to ship anything anywhere.
Yeah.
So everything's kind of going to go up in price.
Right.
But, hopefully that goes down soon.
Well, we have to understand why it went up.
So it went up for a few different reasons. One of them being we lost our oil pipeline, or our oil shipments from Russia. We cut that off. But that was relatively small. It was like between 5 to 12% of our oil, depending on who you ask and what source. But another one is just general inflation coming from printing digitally from the Federal Reserve, which inflates our savings and causes everything to go up in price because the dollar weakens.
Yeah, if you know us at all, you would know that we have little respect for the Federal Reserve, because they are not federal and they do not have a reserve.
I know. It's like this weird archaic system where, like, if you have a small group of people that basically controls the rest of the money for the world.
Right.
Very weird. Eventually I think we'll get away from that. But for now, that's the best system we've got.
Yeah. So
It's the system we're stuck with.
We have the Russian oil. We have the Federal Reserve printing money. Anything else?
Well, yeah. Yeah, probably if I gave it enough thought, but I don't want to get stressed out. What's going on, guys? We're seeing some people join the chat. It's been so long since we've really done anything on YouTube live. This is our 10th episode total on the podcast. So yay, 10th episode for us. But we're doing this one on YouTube just to branch out a little bit.
Right.
But if you ever want to check out the rest of our episodes, we left a link down in the description. But yeah. Anyway.
On Spotify.
Yep. It'll be on Spotify. Here, let me pop out the chat. Gotta get used to this. So now that can be there. Can I blow that up?
Well, what does that mean?
Make it bigger?
I mean, yeah, sure. You can do whatever you want.
It's not getting bigger. It's okay.
So
We'll
I
leave it
guess you
there.
can't do whatever you want.
No, but that's okay. I'll figure it out later.
That's okay. All right. So what's going on?
Well, even Lyft and Uber is getting more expensive, because
I
you
know
take
that.
a Lyft or an Uber every single
Every day, which is a social study. I found out. Take an Uber every day is a social study, because every day I get a different driver.
That's a good point. You get a good smattering of the world. You can talk to different people
When
from
I
different
tell
backgrounds.
you that I have had every kind of person driving me, it's insane. And some of them are very entertaining. Some of them are just concerning. And some of them I have no idea what they're doing. Like, I had a lady doing crochet while she drove.
Literally knitting.
Yeah, and when the light was red, she would get it and she would start knitting, and
That's
then
just
it would turn
efficiency.
exactly. And she was telling me, I'm just doing a blanket now, and she was like, do you want to see where I got it from? And I didn't want to see, but I was
Does
like,
she
sure.
sell them?
No, it's just a hobby.
Oh, it's just for her. Okay,
Yeah,
I respect
I've thought
that.
about it, just like it seems like it suits people that do it.
It's probably
And
pretty calming.
I need to be soothed.
Yeah, we need some soothing
If
these
anybody
days.
has a tip on how to calm yourself down, just send it to me because I'm about to learn how to knit. But anyways, it's been getting really expensive apparently because gas is so pricey.
It's literally everything. Like I opened up Netflix the other day and it said now your subscription is going to cost like $3 more per month. And I'm like, really, Netflix? Like, I'm still not sure if I even want Netflix anymore because I feel like I've seen everything.
I feel like we're actually I thought about it. I was like, I feel like we're just wasting our money every month because I don't watch Netflix anymore. And sometimes when we do like one episode in the entire month. And then we never click on it again until the next month.
I honestly feel like they've lost a lot of their thunder comparatively. But, you know.
What, like the shows?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The shows are garbage.
It's like everything new is some angsty teen drama where they're finding themselves in their sexuality. And I'm like, pass.
But it's because the teens are the ones that have the most amount of time to watch it.
That's true.
So they are the target. We basically became the not target people. So nobody's making a show for us. Like learn how to invest or shit like that.
That's true.
Nobody's doing that.
No. Well, some people are like me, but I'm boring. So anyway, I'm basically 87 when it comes to like how I actually live my life. I drink a lot of seltzer water. I complain about the economy, and I go to bed early. We try to. Gardening. You got a comment here from Brooke. Hi guys. By the way, I have a massive girl crush on Anna. Ooh. So you got that going for you, Anna.
Well, thank you. It took me a tiny second to understand. I was like, oh wait, who?
A girl crush. It's funny.
All right.
But yeah.
Well, thank you.
There's a lot we could talk about and a lot that I don't want to talk about. What's going on in your life, Anna? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just learned how to make kombucha.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's super important.
I mean,
prebiotics and probiotics.
Listen.
The microbiome.
Listen.
Guys, the microbiome.
If you told me like 10 years ago that I would be the kind of person who did gardening and makes her own kombucha and kimchi and sauerkraut, I would laugh at your face.
It's true.
Because in my mind, 10 years ago, I would be like, I don't know, a lawyer in New York City. And now I hate New York City.
Yeah, it's
literally the worst. I can't with like careers that are very stressful because what's the point? And I love gardening and I legit like making stuff like, making my microbiome healthier and avoiding things that I used to love to eat.
Sauerkraut, kimchi.
So the lesson in this rant is that you never know, never say never. You never know who you are until you become that
I agree
person.
with Brooke though. I spend more time scrolling on Netflix than actually like watching something.
That's what happens to us. And sometimes we have 1 hour to watch a show before it becomes dangerously like
close to bedtime.
Exactly. And then the hour goes to waste with just scrolling. So why do we pay Netflix? We shouldn't.
It's unclear.
We
should probably check out a different
precious money on our budget.
It's bad though, because we'll find a show we like and then we'll just watch it until there's no more episodes. Then we're stuck again. But we let's see, what are we watching recently? Bob's Burgers. It's fantastic.
And we don't even watch it on Netflix because it's on Hulu and we don't pay Hulu. So we had to get this is true story. We had to get like those trial because we already pay for Amazon Prime and we pay for Netflix. Like, this is ridiculous. We do not need a third streaming service. I was like, okay, let's do the trial. And I put like an alarm on my phone to let me know like when the trial ended, so I didn't have to pay for the whole subscription. And that's what we did. We watched like 2 whole seasons of the show while we were on the free trial because we don't want to pay for it. It's ridiculous. You have to pay like for 5 different subscription services. No, we're not about to live that life.
No, we're ballers on a budget. And we're trying to tighten our household budget because of inflation. I don't know if that's something anyone else is feeling, but it's something we're feeling as a family. It's something we talk about.
Yeah. What is inflation, Josh?
What is inflation? It is called the silent tax. Because everyone knows the direct tax. You go to the store, you buy something, you're like, 6% tax or sales tax, or depending on where the state is. If you're in Delaware, there's no state tax. Right. So you go somewhere, there's no sales tax. But there's still, housing tax, real estate tax.
Right.
It's insane. Like, it's a large part of our budget is just paying tax.
Yeah. So basically, it's people call it the government tax or the silent
What,
tax.
inflation?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like
Because
there's two ways a government can actually make money and pull money from its citizens. One way is the obvious way. It's very unpopular. People don't like it and they vote against it. It's directly taxing people. It's saying you make X amount of money, well, we're going to take this chunk out just for us, just to fund the government, build the roads, and everyone just kind of accepts that, It was really small before. Like we had a riot back in the day because there was like a 2 or 3% tax, but it's ballooned up to really, really large proportions, but mostly people are okay with it. But then if anyone ever wants to raise it, a whole lot of people freak out because it's really just it's hurting the poorest people the most because people that are the wealthiest, have ways of moving their capital, moving their wealth around so that they don't get taxed.
Yeah.
We could make a separate podcast just about that.
Yeah.
And then they have a second way that the government sort of takes money and extracts money from the citizens, and that's through inflation. So basically they have money printing digitally. It's not physically printing. They do physically print some money, but it's pretty minuscule into the fact that compared to the amount of digital money that they print. And when you expand the money supply, it sort of dilutes the rest of the money in existence.
Yeah.
So if you were to double all the money, the power of the dollar kind of dilutes because you have the same amount of goods being chased by more dollars, if that makes sense. So it's just a supply demand curve. It's like economics 101.
Yeah. So inflation is the alteration of prices because you manipulated the market or the supply of money. So it's like you have a glass of juice. You have the instructions.
I like this analogy.
This much powder or this much water. And then this makes the perfect cup of juice. But then what inflation does is when they print more money, it's like putting more and more and more and more water. And then it's no longer juice. It's like
watered
water.
Down.
Exactly.
And then it's like a brief memory of juice.
Exactly. So it's not the same thing anymore. So that's what we have. You can't buy the same amount of stuff with the same amount of dollars because dollars are not worth the same. Even if like you have a $20 bill, and it's always going to be a $20 bill, but it's going to afford less and less and less and less stuff.
Right. I like the juice analogy. I haven't heard that one before. It makes sense.
Just made it up.
I used to make tea as a kid, where you get the scoop of like that, what is the Nesquik tea or whatever, and you just like put it in.
That's something that I did not have access in my country.
Well, you had something
else.
else.
Tea bags.
I feel like you had some other type of juice with powder, and you would mix it.
Yeah.
Just like a big cup of sugar or something, But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
But yeah, everybody's seeing that. Even, if we don't think about it, everybody's seeing it.
We've got our first question.
Okay.
You want to read it?
I can't. I'm too.
I can read it. I'll read it for you.
Okay.
I'll be our eyes. What do you think is the best financial decisions during a time of inflation? So there's a couple things that could be directed towards the people or towards the government. So typically what a government does when there's a lot of inflation is they try to raise interest rates. And interest rates are just the cost of borrowing money. So they want to make the cost of borrowing money more, so people borrow less. And then there's less printing of money digitally because that's actually how money is created. So if you want a loan for a car or for a house, or if businesses want loans to buy other businesses or run their day-to-day operations, they borrow money to do that. And the cost to borrow money is really what drives how much money is actually borrowed by the economy. So raising that will just slow down people from borrowing money, which slows down the digital money printing and causes inflation to kind of come to a halt.
All right, but that's what the government can do,
right?
Not us. Like we can't do
what
that.
What people should do if there's a lot of inflation, like right now, like I think the official numbers from the federal press release, they say that the CPI is around 7.9%. But if you calculate that using the way that the numbers used to be back in the 70s before they started changing it, it's probably double digits, more like 15% inflation. It's ridiculously high. Everyone knows that because they're like, well, used cars are like 40% more and meat is like 30% more and rent is about 37% more. And you can look at all the categories and you're like, why are they saying 7.9%?
Right.
And if you look into their calculation, it's really, really interesting. But anyway, so what people should do in an inflationary environment is move their money out of cash. If you have cash sitting in a savings account, it's just sitting there in dollars. That's the worst possible place to put it. And I've run actual calculations on, let's say you lose 10% of your money per year and let's say you can save $1,000 a month, so that's $12,000 a year that you can save. If you keep that in cash in a savings account, you lose 80% of that after like 20 years.
But by lose, you mean lose the buying power of the money.
You lose and that's where it gets tricky. And that's where most people, and I didn't even understand this a few years ago, but that's where most people get confused. They would think, well, if I just keep saving dollars and I keep seeing my savings account grow, shouldn't that be fine? It's like, yes, but if your savings account is growing at one speed and the prices of things are growing faster than that.
It's watered down juice.
It's watered down juice, guys. You're going to be left down with a very watery juiced retirement.
Yeah, you can't afford the same things with that amount of money. That's what he means.
Yeah. So that's the problem. It's like your great grandfather was like, in my day, a loaf of bread was a nickel. You're like, really?
It's hard for younger people though, because before you go to college, if you have things like a trust fund, then it's easier because already
trust fund
your
kids.
parents already invested your money for you, and you have like something kept
which
for
is
you.
the vast minority of people. Most people don't have.
Exactly. I didn't have a trust fund.
Right.
Like most people don't. So if you don't, and you are in a situation like you're a student and you don't have a lot of money, and the options are very scarce because you have to look for investments that are easy to liquidate because you don't have the money to invest long term. So buying things there you can touch, because then you can sell
physical
those
assets.
things. Exactly.
Well, that's what they say. In an inflationary environment, you want to move your money out of dollars and invest them into assets.
Yeah.
So assets could be real estate, they could be property, they could be stocks, even shares of a company,
or like some gold or whatever has value.
Physical materials, physical precious metals. But they say stocks can be pretty good. Stocks have been exploding over the past 3 years.
Right, but stocks are risky for short term.
In the short term, if you're saving money that you need in the short term, I wouldn't recommend stocks. But if you're saving it for the long run, which most people our age, they're young, they probably want to save for retirement, but.
Yeah. You have like different, you have the 18 to 22 year olds, they're college age. And then the 23 to, 30 something. They're out of college, but they're still on their second job. They don't have a family. Then that's a different moment of investing. And then you have families. And when you have families, you have to account for your kids and account like for the expenses for raising those children, and how do you save money for them in the future. So like just talking to the younger people, the idea of like buying physical stuff is a good idea, just because if you buy this cup, I don't know, imagine if this cup is, I'm full of analogies. This is like if you buy this cup
that holds the juice, the watered down juice,
the cup, I don't know, today cost $2.
Okay, it's an expensive
and
cup.
Now I have this cup for myself. If you hold this as an investment, the cup in a few years, just because of inflation, is gonna cost $5 or maybe $4, and you only bought it with $2. So if you save those $2, it's gonna be $2 in a year. It's gonna keep being $2 or 2.5.
So physical things hold their value.
Exactly. But it's gonna go up with the price of inflation.
You would have to sell it though to make that profit.
Exactly. But there are things that are easier to sell.
Right.
If there are things that other people can recognize the value of, like precious metals and
Tide Pods
and commodities and
Tide Pods. Do you guys know that, like, literally there are some countries right now, pretty impoverished countries, that are using Tide Pods instead of their local currency? Mm-hmm. They're using laundry detergent pods to trade.
What?
Yeah, instead of their own currency. I mean, this has happened so many times. There's been literally dozens and dozens of failed currencies just in the past 10 years. So you're looking at Indonesia, you're looking at Venezuela, you're looking at Myanmar, Germany. There are these places, and the story is always the same. It happens just like it's happening right here in our country, where the government says, well, we want to pay for all these things, and we only can tax our population so much before they revolt against us. So what we're going to do is just print a whole bunch of money, which dilutes and dissolves the savings of anyone who actually was responsible and saved.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they flood the market with all of this liquid cash, and that creates price spikes. So everything gets super expensive. There's times where in Venezuela, you'd go to the grocery store and a loaf of bread would be 1,000 of whatever the currency is. By the time you get to the cash register, it's like 1,500.
Yeah.
It's like inflation in the thousands percent. They call that runaway inflation or hyperinflation.
Right.
So that's what happens. And eventually they get rid of it. I mean, you remember your mother and grandmother telling you in Brazil that you had been through, I think, they had seen 4 different currencies come and go.
Yes, until we got to the currency that we have now. And it was like a very tight plan to change into a sound currency.
It's like they just inflate it until the currency is not worth anything. It's not even worth the paper is worth more than the currency itself.
Yeah.
And then they get rid of it and they start a new currency and they do the same thing over again.
Yeah. And it was like that. They had the hyperinflation in the 80s, and it was terrible because that same thing happened. You would buy something and then you would get to the register and the price was different. So you would have like, when you go to a sale place, like, and they have like 2 prices on top of each other.
Right.
That would happen, but like with 7 different prices throughout the day.
Oh my gosh.
So imagine living on that world.
So what that does in a more philosophical sense is it causes people's time horizons to narrow. So you're no longer thinking about what am I going to do with my money 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How am I going to save for my kids, my grandkids? You're not doing that anymore. Oh, yes. And she is from Brazil. I forgot to say that. Someone asked.
I am very Brazilian.
You're not when your currency is constantly being devalued by your government printing a whole bunch of it. That's causing people to think in the short term because they're thinking, well, why in the world would I save this money in my savings account if it's not going to be worth as much next year?
Right.
So you want to spend it all as fast as possible. So it incentivizes people to think in the short run and not think in the long run. And that's a bad recipe for sustaining an economy.
Right.
And eventually the bottom falls out, the currency collapses, and they kind of start all over again.
Right. Yeah.
So essentially, I'm worried about that happening right now. The last time we had inflation this high was back in the 70s in the United States. And what they ended up doing was raising the interest rates like crazy. They raised them to like 10, 15% to try to get the borrowing to slow down so that the inflation would slow down. And eventually that happened. But then we kind of had a different Federal Reserve chairman who thought differently. We had a Ben Bernanke, then now we have Jerome Powell. And these are just people that are in charge of how much to raise the federal fund rate, basically the cost of moving money from one bank to another. It's super complicated. It might be even too complicated for us to get into in this podcast.
I wanna help the people.
Simplify it a little because I feel like I'm not making sense here.
You are making sense, but basically is that the money that we have, because it's in the hands of the government, they can manipulate it. It's very difficult to make decisions depending on cash. Because cash can be manipulated. They can inflate it. They can make it worth less. So to be very specific, when we talk about, coming out of cash and investing on other things or making your wealth go on other things, we're basically saying is just become less dependent on the moves of the government. Take advantage of it. So if they inflate the dollar like they are right now, then you're taking advantage because you own something that is always also going to grow in value. So if you're like a college student and you're trying to save money, try to save money not in cash. Try to save money in a stock. If you're saving for long term, just put it there. Don't look at it. Try to save money in commodities. Try to save money on things that are touchable or things that are tangible. Because if you're depending on cash,
Pokemon cards.
Just on things, there are things, things that can be used, things that people depend on, because money, government money, it's so dependent on the government that you can't trust long term.
How are we going to tell a whole bunch of high school and college age people to start buying gold and silver? And that doesn't make any sense. They're going to be like, well, why would I do that?
We can't, but we can say.
By the way, none of this is financial advice. We have to say that legally. Because you have to give someone financial advice, you have to have a certain certificate or whatever.
All right.
So all we're going to say is that these are general things, not financial advice. We're just telling you what we're doing with our portfolio.
Right.
Because we're concerned about what our specific government is doing with our currency.
And you should be too.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing is it's not just the United States. It's actually a whole bunch of developed countries. Most countries are doing this right now. They're following the lead of the United States and printing a whole bunch of money digitally.
Well,
I feel like I'm missing some comments here. Did I miss anything?
I don't know. but just to tie things up.
Yeah, tie it up for us.
That we can't just tell people to buy gold or but we can tell everybody that, you know, the best way to be prepared is be prepared. Like, you think, okay, I'm in college now. What do you want to do after college? Like, how is your college expenses now? And how are you going to maintain that? And where can you save to maintain that? And where can you put that money to save to maintain that? Like, think about your own life, not depending on who is the president, what are they doing for the people. Like, no. Take that. If the government ever gives you something, first of all, it's going to cost you anyway because you're the person paying for taxes. But if they give you anything, take it as a bonus. But like, think about yourself and what can you do to protect yourself from what they can mess up with your money, you know? So we can't tell people like, this is what you should do. But I feel like if you just have a plan for how does my life cost and how can I possibly pay for this? And can I take some money away to save and put into something? That is just a person looking after themselves, you know? And that's just common sense, I guess.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, it's a time where it's good to save. Save whatever you can.
Yeah.
Figure out what your living expenses are, how much you can manage to save, even if it's something very small, and just put that away.
Yeah.
You know, and if it starts out just putting it in a savings account, that's fine, but just try to do as much as you can to think about, well, where can I invest this cash?
That is why we're talking about this, because when you start doing that and you start looking for things to invest, you start listening to things like this, things that we're saying, you know, these are alternatives for you.
Start jumping down that financial rabbit hole and discovering this whole world. You know, it's concerning because what's happening right now, if you looked at the entire country, the entire United States and the world, but just look at the United States first. Most people, I think it's 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, they're not saving anything. They're basically spending everything that they make. So that's the vast majority. And most people, I think it's around 70%, 60, 70%, have at least $6,000, $7,000 in credit card debt that they're not paying off. They just carry it over month to month. And that's high interest debt. So it's high interest debt that they're having to pay on every single month just to carry the balance. So what you have is a whole bunch of people who are not saving. And if you're not saving, well, then you're going to be stuck when it's time for you to retire. Or maybe you're in an old age and you have an accident or something and you can't work anymore and you're not financially prepared to just stop.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what the average age of retirement is. Is it like 65, 70, like somewhere in there?
Yeah.
I feel like that sounds right. You know, so I think that's where most people would start feeling like, yeah, I kind of want to spend more time with the grandkids and like do more things that I enjoy.
You don't have the same strength anymore.
Yeah, you're just older.
Yeah.
It's just the human body, right? You know, I don't want to keep working when I'm 80 or 90, you know?
Yeah, no, you can't.
No, you can't. You're not the same as you are when you're, you know, in your 20s, 30s, 40s. Anyway, I digress. The whole point is most people aren't saving, and so most people are going to be stuck in retirement.
Yeah,
They're going to have to work longer than they would even like to work.
Yeah.
And it's weird because most people don't think about that.
Right.
There was this study I was watching where they started doing brain scans of people of all ages, and they started in colleges, and they would have people hooked up to these MRI machines that would study the brain activity. And they showed them a series of photos and would see, you know, what part of their brain would light up when they saw certain things. And they started asking them interesting questions. They would ask them like, what do you think about what you're going to do tomorrow? And they would have them just go through their day. And they're like, well, I'll probably wake up, get ready for work, you know, and then I'll do this, do that. And they would see the brain activity would light up pretty intensely. And they said, well, what do you think you're going to do 10 years from now? And they're like, they had to think about it a little more. And they realized that the brain activity would decrease the longer ahead that they would inquire about the individual's life. And they said, well, where do you see yourselves when you're 50, when you're 60? Very, very low brain activity. People aren't thinking about it. That's the conclusion that they came to, is that people just weren't thinking about that far ahead.
Right.
And if you're not thinking that far ahead, it makes sense that you're not going to be preparing for that life.
Right. You don't know what you're preparing for.
You don't know what you're preparing for, but
Right.
you're preparing for tomorrow, for
Right.
sure, for next week, what you're going to do on the weekend.
Yeah.
But that's as far as most people go.
Right.
And so what this one individual study did was it started creating that face app where they would take a picture of someone's face and then digitally, artificial intelligence like
Age it.
age it. so that people could see what they look like when they're going to be 60, 70, 80.
Right.
And they said when they did that, people actually would have more of an attachment emotionally to themselves in retirement and then make better decisions and think like, I'm going to be old one day. They're looking at a picture of themselves like, this is you when you want to retire and you can't.
You're so weird.
Isn't
Why
that
are we
weird?
so weird?
People are weird, but it actually helped to get people to think about the future.
Yeah.
You know, but I would just, if I could have anything accomplished with this podcast or this episode, it's only just to help people think that maybe it'd be a good idea to save even 5% of what you make.
Yeah. Just delay what you can possibly delay. Like college is very temporary, school is very temporary, and then you have the rest of your life. You know that with seasons they're longer. Like you will get out and get a job that you probably, you know, be in for a long time, and you're gonna have a house that you're gonna have forever, and you're gonna have a family that you're gonna have forever. That is more important than all, you know, the trendy stuff that you want to buy and you want to do, and like they don't actually mean anything. So just delay gratification on all the things that don't matter, and then save for more important things like your future self, and you know, when you can actually buy yourself a house and be independent, and that is more it's such a great feeling. So, you know, just think about your future self and treat it kindly.
Treat yourself kindly in the future, but not today. All right, this mixed messages. I want to read the rest of these here.
All right.
Let's see here. Poppy said, hey, Poppy. Poppy says, confused here. You guys haven't put anything on here in months, and you say this is episode 10 of a podcast. That's fair.
Yeah, it is very confusing because we made a deal with ourselves to make a podcast. And when we got to the 10th podcast, we would do it on YouTube.
True.
Because we wanted to prove to ourselves that we could do a podcast.
We just wanted to get our gears moving.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
You know?
So we started putting them on Spotify.
Hey, the link's in the description if you want to check out any of the other podcasts.
Yeah, we have been there for a while.
Yeah. We've been
just
enjoying
haven't been
it.
here.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm
But
sorry
anyway.
for the confusion.
It's a lot of confusion. I should have stated that a little more clearly in the beginning. That's my bad.
Yeah, it's not like the first episode it's named number 10. It's actually the number 10.
Brooke says, this is really helpful stuff, guys. I'm newly financially independent college students. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Kudos to you. It's really hard. I used to work in college too, and I had help from my mom to pay for. I used to live, you know, on a house with other students, and she would help me pay for my rent, but that was it. And then after that, I moved here and I became completely independent. It's really hard. So, you know, keep on going. I know how hard that is.
Yeah.
Mostly with everything being so freaking expensive.
Yeah, no joke. No joke. We've got Team Giselle saying hi. Hey, Team Giselle.
Hi.
Man, it's been a while. I'm seeing these people that I recognize, but it has been a long, long time. But yeah, we got here. Brooke says, nice. My boyfriend is Japanese Brazilian. He lives in Switzerland.
Ooh.
Switzerland. So we are on a long distance relationship. Well, we understand that. We understand the struggles of the long distance relationship.
I didn't know what that meant. I'm so glad that you.
I'm cool and hip with the young kids. I know what LDR means. It could mean something different. Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on long distance relationships. If you're interested to talk about this a little bit in the podcast. Well, it's ridiculously difficult, and I eventually tapped out. Like, we were long distance for a little while, and I was like, it's just not working, you know, and then eventually we reconnected once we were actually closer to each other geographically.
Yeah, closer, you know, like this, because I
like
I
instead
was in
of
Boston
being
and you
instead
were
of
here.
being like a 10-hour plane ride away, we
Yeah.
were or longer than that. We were a 2-hour plane ride away.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, okay, I think I could do a 2-hour plane ride. You know, but
yeah, but it was weird because we started, you know, our relationship without having never seen each other in person, and that made things a layer more difficult. So I don't know how you guys are, but after we actually saw each other in person and we saw how our dynamic was, and we knew it could work, it gave us strength to do it, like long distance, and we could schedule visits. But most importantly, we talked a lot about things that were essential, because nothing is worse, and I've been there, than spending time with someone and there's not there on a long distance, and you don't know the essentials about that person, and then you discover that they're actually not the person that you want to spend your life with, because the important things for you are not matching with what is important for them. So just, don't waste the time. Just take all the time, read books together. We read a bunch of books together.
That's true.
We would discuss them, like books on relationships, on family, on just love, and we would do that. Yeah, that was fun.
Because you got someone to read with, which is cool, but at the same time, if you're reading like a book, especially a book like about relationships, all these topics are going to come up. It makes them interesting to talk about.
Yeah. So we would do that.
Oh my gosh, it's Richie! It's Richie 720. Oh man, what's going on, Richie? It's been a minute. I'm glad you're still alive. I follow you on Instagram, so I know you've been alive. He's got a kid now.
I know, you showed it to me.
So cute. So awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, congrats to the new Papa Richie.
But yeah, we do have a lot of Japanese Brazilians. That is
yeah, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Brazil has the highest population of Japanese people outside of Japan.
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah, we have a lot, and we have very good Japanese food. We don't have a lot of diversity in food or cultures in Brazil. Like, Brazilian people are very diverse, but we're all Brazilians. We don't have the American concept of like, oh, I'm Italian, but you're American. Like, you're American. If you're born here, you're not Italian. Like, your grandma was Italian, she was Italian. You're not. Like, you have some of it in your blood, but you're not Italian. I can't understand when people say that, because if you tell me that you're Italian, in my mind, you were born there. You better be born doing this.
That's interesting, because you're right. People here in the United States, they'll say like, oh, I'm this or I'm that. It's like, but in Brazil, it doesn't really, you're from Brazil.
You're Brazilian.
You're Brazilian.
So, unless we have like, a lot of Japanese people have their neighborhoods in São Paulo mostly, and they speak Japanese and they have Japanese shops. But most Japanese people in Brazil just speak Portuguese, and some of them don't speak Japanese. And if you ask them, they're Brazilians, they still keep their culture, but they're Brazilians. They're born there, and that's their country. That's our country. So we don't have a lot. Don't have a lot of other cultures in Brazil, and a lot of other countries that moved to Brazil like Japanese people did. But we have very, very good Japanese food because we have a lot of Japanese people.
So you guys got sushi. That's what you're telling me.
Oh yeah.
I bet it's banging.
Different sushi too. The first time that I ate sushi with avocado was here.
Ooh, okay. So we got the avocado sushi. You guys don't have it.
No.
Okay.
That was a surprise.
Respect.
But yeah. Do we have anything else?
I got a comment from Brooke here. I'm Canadian and he's doing his PhD in Switzerland, so it's hard even with time zones.
Yeah, time zones are a bitch.
What's his PhD in? I'm curious. That's super interesting. PhD in Switzerland. Thank you so much. Looking good, bro. Yeah, I'm alive and better and never daddy. Life is great. Good. Glad to hear that, Reggie.
Yeah,
glad
babies are the best.
Well. They are, especially at that age.
Yeah. I mean, I take care of a baby now. I'm obsessed with him.
It isn't my baby, but it's also not her baby.
It's not my
Just
baby.
To clarify this.
I love other people's babies.
Yeah.
at this time of my life.
Because it has been a while since I've made a video. So, I show up and you're talking about taking care.
We have no babies.
No.
We are the babies.
We are the babies. Wow. Oh my gosh. So funny. Do you want to talk about Ukraine and Russia?
No.
It's so stressful.
It is very
We should just pull a Kamala Harris and be like, so basically, Russia is a
very big country.
Ukraine's a small country. Russia invaded Ukraine, so that's
not
bad.
good. Yeah.
And I'm like, I understand that.
She's embarrassing.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to even stay on top of all the Ukraine-Russia stuff. Because there's so much that happens every day. What is this?
And you don't know what's true and not.
No idea. Not. You have to sort through the misinformation,
right.
And you're like, is this Russian propaganda? Or is this Ukraine propaganda? Is this true?
I don't think people understand how complicated the time that we live in is, because we are, the first generation to be in the middle of a war with social media.
Yeah, it's an information war, and the main battle is on meme battles, basically.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It's like a battle of memes at this point.
We have no data on this because we're the first. So you can't
it's experimental.
study.
It's like a new frontier. We're in the digital age, and so the warfare is digital.
They have like staged videos, they have deep fakes, they have like, you have all of these things that come out and you don't know if they're true.
It's
they
amazing.
kept footage from 20 years ago and say that
Exactly.
it's from yesterday.
I'm amazed when I figure out like Russia has a unit that is employed by the government. It's a government Russian unit of like thousands of people who just sit on computers and make misinformation. Isn't that insane? That's absolutely insane. I was like, do we have that? I feel like if they have that, we should have that, right? Like I want ours to be better. You know, I want to make better memes that are funnier and crazier. And like if Russia has it, China has that. Oh, by the way, look at this. This is insane. Let me show you something with China lately. There's so many crazy things. The Justice Department charged 5 individuals who are allegedly working on behalf of China's secret police to silence certain Chinese dissidents residing in the U.S., including a U.S. congressional hopeful.
Okay.
Basically, if there's anyone from China that's living in the United States and they say anything bad about China, there's a unit of a secret police force inside the United States working from China to go shut those people down.
But how do they do that? Do they do that with the...
They probably do WhatsApp. They're like, go get these people. They're talking about it. And they're like, ah. And they show up at the door. Could you imagine just living in the United States and you think it's like your pizza, but it's not. It's like a group of Chinese people literally from China, like the secret police coming to shut you down.
That's insane.
That's insane. That could be a movie. That should be a movie.
I mean, here's the thing. They made Black Mirror and just like to warn us all about what the government can do. And then the government is doing all those
now
things.
It's happening.
And we're just like, oh, so that's happened. It's just like the
it's like
show.
Episode 7 was February, basically.
So, I don't like these, the hope that we have in people like, oh, wake up. This could become something worse because we're not doing anything about it.
No. All right, so what are we doing here? We got Brooke saying, yeah, my boyfriend has very little knowledge about Japanese culture since their family's been in Brazil since the 1930s.
Yep.
Interesting. Oh, and he's in engineering. Holla.
Engineering.
I'm also in engineering.
Yep.
All right. It says, LMAO, Josh, want to talk about Russia, something my boyfriend would say. That's hilarious. So I'm guessing he likes talking about that stuff, too.
We do that a lot. We talk a lot about politics and a lot about finance, like during our everyday lives. And I actually have made a point of not talking about any of that stuff during dinner.
Yeah, she tells me no finance during dinner. She gets mad at me.
It's too much. It just gets too much.
Because you're just like, you're just cutting your steak and you're like, this is stressful.
I want a moment of peace. I want to just chill with a glass of wine and eating the warm meal that I just prepared.
I feel like if we talk about Russia, we need wine. Or at least vodka.
You need something stronger, yeah.
Some vodka, maybe. By the way, did you know Russia banned Instagram?
Yeah, I saw that.
Isn't that crazy? Because apparently, they're saying because of Meta, which is Facebook, is allowing people to break that barrier that they've set up, break their own rules, and you can now threaten Russian people,
Isn't that insane?
It's like you used to be like, okay, no hate speech, but now they're like, well, if it's against Russia, it's okay to do that. Yeah. And I'm like, really, Facebook? Like, I get no one's really in favor of what they're doing, but like, is it okay to do? Because like, not all Russian people are for that.
But if companies like Facebook and Twitter, they play a game called "We Are Neutral," but we make judgments all the time.
How do you do that? I feel like that's...
Well, they say you can't do any hate speech on our platform because that's not what we do. We're just a neutral platform. You can't just have, those judgment calls in here. But they keep taking people out, not for having hate speech, but for just, whatever they interpret as hate speech. So if you're doing hate speech against something that their people like, or their people support, they don't interpret that as hate speech. That's what people don't understand. Whenever you define something, that depends on a definition, like hate speech. What is it? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I will have a definition. If you ask you, you will have another definition.
So what you're saying is their definitions are fluid depending on where the political winds are blowing.
It's fluid because it depends on people defining it. That's it. You can't...
I agree, and I would say, and this is going to sound super controversial, but I have reasons for why I believe this. I really think anyone should be allowed to say anything. I don't think that hate speech should be banned, just short of making direct threats to individuals. Like if you say like, I hate this person, I'm going to kill this person. Of course, that's a direct threat to an individual.
Right.
But if you're saying general hateful things about a whole group of people, I think that should be allowed so that people can see that and pile onto that.
Right.
I think the only solution for bad ideas like hate speech, it's a bad idea, is better ideas.
Right.
And if we silence bad ideas, then they grow in kind of these dark areas of the internet.
They still exist. You just don't know
They still
about
exist, but they stagnate.
Right.
And they get moldy and worse and they warp and then they create these weird factions of people. And you're like, bro, if we just let that on Twitter, people would destroy that.
Yeah.
And you would watch it and be like, that guy's an idiot. Like he said something really dumb and then all these people came and
the better ideas would never see the light of sun.
Yeah, we need to be like, okay, well, what do you think about the way the economy is right now? Because in China, you can't say anything bad about the economy.
Right.
You can't say anything bad about the government. So if you have anything critical, you disappear.
I mean,
that's not good.
Everybody knows that even the movies that we export to China are changed because, according to China law, they take scenes out.
They take whole scenes.
They change
They
titles.
ban some movies too.
And this is something that everybody knows. Now, the same country that does this kind of thing, that just like alters a piece of art that someone else created just because they don't want their 1 billion people to watch that, and they can control, like a government this big can control that amount of people and what they're allowed to watch. You really have a problem believing that they have, people controlling what you can say about themselves, about their government, about the way that they deal with things. And
it's really interesting.
It's just like, no, it's the same freaking people. It's just like when Russia invaded Crimea. Here is us talking about Russia. We just said we weren't going to talk about Russia, but
How dare you?
They invaded like a part of the Crimea territory first, and then we're just like, oh, maybe they'll just stay there. Maybe they're just not doing anything. Just like, they are there. They're just like sending troops. They're surrounded. Of course they're going to do something because it's the same people. Like, we have like this crazy thing that we put on other people. Like, I think that your intentions are like my intentions. So I project what I want on what you want.
That's a good point. Like we act like we know how Russians think. Or how Vladimir Putin thinks.
We want peace, so you must want peace too.
He must want peace too. He must be scared of the U.S. because we think we're great. We think we have a great military.
It happens with everything. Like, some people interpret what other people say with malice because they want to, but the person who said it didn't have any malice.
Miscommunications, basically.
Yeah, so there are people being banned from platforms for saying something that they had no bad intentions in saying, and it wasn't something hateful, or it was, sometimes it's just a debate, like, so is this weird that this thing is happening, and then like banned because they questioned it.
I actually have a funny story about that. I was on Reddit and I posted a speech that I liked, but it was critical of China, and it was on a Chinese subreddit. And I posted it, and it was just a speech, just a 60-second long speech, 1 minute, and I was immediately banned by the moderators. And I messaged the moderators and I was like, why was I banned? And they were like, well, this is misinformation. Were you intending this as sarcasm, or were you intending this as you were an advocate of it? And I was like, I didn't know that there was an option. And so I just messed with them and I was like, oh, I was posting it sarcastically, And they were like, oh, okay, then it's allowed. Then they unbanned me and they allowed me to post the video because I said I was being sarcastic by posting it. That like I was making fun of it. So it was unbelievable. I was like, this is a United States app.
Yeah.
But like, you can't even say, it's just amazing the amount of like censorship that's out there right now.
Yeah.
I was like, this is interesting because it's all up to whatever some Reddit mod or whatever some person working at Facebook or some KGB agent working in Russia is building these
however
memes.
they feel about it.
It's so interesting. Everything's fluid. I think that's one thing you'll get out of anything society. Everything's fluid and everything's changing.
Well, some people define everything as fluid. It doesn't mean they are, because if you say like, I want fire to be cold now, and you put your hand in it, you're still gonna get burned. So you can't redefine certain things.
There are some things that are permanently etched in reality based on physical laws, biological laws, things like that.
Yeah.
It's a very controversial statement.
Well, yeah, because reality apparently is controversial. But
anyways, oh man.
How long have we been doing this?
Do you want me to check? I haven't checked yet.
Then for getting to 50 minutes now.
It says we've been going
50
minutes. Okay. I respect that. Do you want to wrap it up?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. Well, thank you guys for listening, for watching. It's not just listening anymore because this is like visual and audio. First one on YouTube. We have 9 other episodes on Spotify.
They are less random than this one.
Yeah, and if you guys have any topics for the next one, please shoot them to us.
Right.
By commenting them or sending us a message. But,
yeah, we usually talk about things that are happening in science, in technology.
Nothing is off limit.
Just, whatever it's
except for Russia.
Unless
we have vodka, then we can talk about Russia.
We have talked about Russia in a different podcast, so if you're interested, you can check that out.
Yeah, and we'll do a better job of scheduling this in advance so that the next time it happens, we'll be like, boom, it's gonna happen at 2 p.m. Also, I'm gonna make Brooke a mod because I feel like she'll make a good mod. I'm gonna do that. How do I do that? Add moderator. Brooke is now a moderator. How great is that?
You gave her the title. You don't even know if she wants the title.
Well, I mean,
You're assuming that's a gift. Here's a gift.
It's not a gift. I just feel like she earned it.
All right. Brooke is not moderated like a little shiny star.
Well, yeah, you got the star sticker. But anyway, yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. And have a great rest of your day and week.
See you guys in the next one.
Bye.